At the White House in Washington, COVID-19 is now hitting close to home. 2 staffers have tested positive, and several people on the coronavirus task force are now self-isolating. As Jackson Proskow reports, if the virus can reach one of the most secure buildings in the world, what does it mean for the rest of the country?
All the security in the world couldn't stop COVID-19 from penetrating the White House, potentially exposing the president and vice president.
It can happen. It's the hidden enemy. Remember that. It's the hidden enemy. So things happen.
Trump and his staff are given daily coronavirus tests. After the vice president's press secretary and the president's personal valet tested positive, there was a rush to trace anyone the 2 people had contact with.
Testing is important to quickly detect an outbreak and to contain an outbreak.
Members of the coronavirus task force, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, went into a modified quarantine as a precaution. The vice president declined to isolate. But rapid testing and tracing is largely unavailable to most Americans. Last week, the president also suggested it isn't needed.
This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great.
In an admission of vulnerability, the White House is now asking staff other than the president to wear face masks, muddling the message as Trump insists the virus is under control and states should reopen.
I think it points to the fact that all businesses need to be careful. And by the way, they need updated guidance from our Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to ensure that they create a workplace that is as safe as possible.
Polls show most Americans were already worried about the risks of reopening too quickly. If the virus can spread here, it can spread anywhere. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
There are new cases of COVID-19 reported in Wuhan, China, the first since lifting the 10-week lockdown there. 5 new cases were recorded in Wuhan. All of them live in the same residential compound, and they were asymptomatic, meaning they tested positive for the virus but were not exhibiting any clinical symptoms like cough or fever. Health authorities have warned that as countries emerge from strict lockdowns, a rise in infections like this is likely. South Korea fears it could be on the cusp of a second wave. It has scrapped plans to reopen schools this week after a cluster of new cases linked to the capital's nightclub district. 85 recent cases are connected to bars and nightclubs popular with the LGBTQ community in Seoul, and all are linked to one man who is bar hopping. Authorities are contact tracing thousands of people who may have been to those bars and clubs. But there's been some reluctance to that. Some people in the gay community prefer anonymity and fear a backlash from South Korea's relatively conservative society. And in Germany, cases are rising just as lockdown measures there are easing. Germany recorded 357 new cases today, bringing the total number in that country to nearly 170,000. Gyms did reopen over the weekend, and places like restaurants, museums, and shopping malls reopened last week. Physical distancing measures are still in place, but the reproduction rate for the virus in Germany shows that it is now spreading exponentially.
There's so much information surrounding coronavirus out there now. We know you have questions. Email your questions at globalnews.ca. Tune in to Global National or go to globalnews.ca/coronavirus now to find the answers.